We are live.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to call this meeting of the New York Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government to order on this day, February 28th, 2023. I'd ask the Executive Director to declare that we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum, and let me say that this meeting is being held pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meetings law. Both the Commission's meeting room in Albany and the meeting room we're using in New York City are open to the public during public session. And let me add that we do have one Commissioner, Commissioner Edwards, who is attending the meeting remotely pursuant to Section 103-A of the Public Officers Law and the Commission's resolution permitting remote participation in extraordinary circumstances. So we're ready to proceed.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our newest commissioner to the commission, Ava Ayers. And Ava, if you'd like to say a few words.
Sure. I'll just say thank you very much to everybody. I'm honored to have been confirmed. I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you. I'm meeting a few for the first time today. I'm really looking forward to working with everybody and to doing my best. Thanks so much.
That's great. Well, welcome. And we're very, very happy and pleased to have you. And we look forward to your contributions to the commission.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have a report on staff promotions and new hires.
Yes, I'm very pleased to announce, and this was the subject of a press release, which is in the agenda book for the meeting under tab A. But just briefly, let me announce and congratulate the following. Keith C. St. John, who is our new general counsel, and he's here in Albany. Kavita K. Bhatt, who is in the New York office, who is deputy general counsel. Carol Quinn here in Albany, director of lobbying. Emily DeSantis will be joining us shortly in March as Director of Communications and Public Affairs and as Public Information Officer. Michael Sand in New York is the new Director of Ethics. Mariana Cadiz has been promoted to Acting Director of Administration. Megan E. Matolo, who is here in the meeting room in Albany, is our new Deputy Director of Lobbying. Marlena Diaz, who is the voice coming from above today, is our new Deputy Director of Learning, Innovation, Administration. Lori A. Donadio, who's also here in Albany, is now our new Managing Principal Investigative Analyst. Brian Keogh, here in Albany, has been promoted to Lobbying Filing Specialist, as has Christian Milazzo. And we have several new additions to the commission. Michael Ruth, Lobbying Assistant Filing Specialist. Nathaniel Hathaway here in Albany, Lobbying Assistant Filing Specialist. And Lillian Garland, who will be our new FDS Assistant Filing Specialist. Welcome to everyone and congratulations.
Excellent. Did we mention Emily DeSantis?
Yes.
Did I just
Yes,
miss that?
yes.
Okay, great.
And Emily will
Excellent.
be joining us in first week of March.
Great. Well, congratulations, first of all, to all the staff, both on your promotions and your appointments. And it's been a pleasure to work with those of you who we've known now for some months, over almost, 6 months or so. And it's nice to see this transition happening. And as I said in my statement, not only your experience, but you're committed to protecting the ethics for the people of the state of New York. And we're looking forward to your continued leadership in that regard. Mr. Commissioner Cardozo.
Are there any major vacancies? And obviously, I know there are vacancies, but at the high level that still need to be filled?
There are. We are in the process of finalizing the recruitments for, we have one acceptance in the investigative division for Assistant Deputy Director of Investigations. We're about to finalize recruiting for the director of that division. And that will complete the major executive level appointments and hires and promotions in the agency. And then we have some filling out to do below under the existing interim staffing plan. And of course, we have a proposed further expanded staffing plan for the commission to consider. But when those steps are filled and some of the remaining subordinate positions have been filled, we will have completed the interim staffing plan recruitment process.
Excellent. And congratulations again. A motion to approve the minutes for the January 31, 2023 meeting. So it's moved by Vice Chair Austin, seconded by Commissioner Cardozo. Are there any revisions, changes, corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
I'd like to abstain.
Yes, absolutely. With one
I wasn't here.
abstention from Commissioner Ayers.
Oh,
Please
it's Ayers,
abstain.
by the way.
Ayers, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Yeah.
fine.
All right, operations update?
The operations update is under tab C. As requested at the last commission meeting, we have added an additional column comparing the reported month's performance to the preceding month. So going across the columns, we now have the prior month. In this instance, it's December. We have the monthly count for January, the period we're reporting on. A comparison to the monthly count in January of 2022, year-to-date, which of course is the same as the January figure because it's the first month of the calendar year, and then a comparison to the same period, which again is January, under the year-to-date column in the final column. And as before, figures are picking up. We expect activity to increase, both inflow in terms of outside reporting and our own internal activity as we complete the staffing plan.
Commissioner Cardozo.
On page 6 of the attachment, I noticed that there are no random audits or completed audits. And I just wonder, is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, the explanation for the audits, statutory audits, is that those are drawn on a quarterly basis, and when the audits are completed for the quarter,
Okay.
there's no report. But there will be another draw, and the process will begin again.
Commissioner
And
Wood.
it varies, I should say, it varies from year to year, depending on how much time it takes. And we will be adding an additional auditor. I should say we have recruited a new addition to the department, and unfortunately, we couldn't compete with his current employer. So that position is one of the positions we are re-recruiting.
Commissioner Whitting.
On page 5, I see that the ethics training is still only 2, and the number of individuals who completed lobbying training looks exceptional at 1,347, but on the ethics side, it's pretty low.
I think that's training held, and we can talk more about
Right,
that
the
later.
trainings are generally held twice a month,
Right,
every other
as
week.
opposed to.
So for the month of January.
And I will talk about the overall statewide workforce training in a bit.
Okay.
But this refers only to trainings conducted by our trainers.
Okay, and
So,
the
and not-
number of
and-
individuals is 109 versus 1,347 in lobbying.
And the difference is that
We've got, we can hear you in New York, just so you know.
Yeah, we were having trouble with the mute button, but we've got it straightened out.
Okay, great, thanks. Go ahead.
all right, good. The difference is, as reported at the last meeting, and I'll be talking about that shortly, the new ethics for lobbyists and lobbying clients training incepted in January. The addition of clients is a new feature under ECRA. And that system is basically administered on a biennial basis to coincide. All right. To coincide with the inception of biennial registration cycle. So that just rolled out, and in due course, and Carol can talk to this in more detail. We'll get to it later on the agenda, but in due course, all roughly 12,000 plus lobbyists and clients will have to take that training. So that number is going to go from 1,347 over the next 2 months or 3 months, assuming compliance. But we'll come back.
I'm very pleased with the numbers in the lobbying. I'm just dissatisfied or just questioning or asking for clarity on the numbers in ethics.
Yeah.
But I'm very satisfied with lobbying.
Right, and the difference is the lobbying is an online course
Okay.
that we rolled out on January 18th, and lobbyists and clients have to comply with that in relatively short order. the ethics training program for the workforce is handled both by this agency and by ethics officers in the 300 and I guess we're at 94 agencies that are responsible for lobbying training. This is just us, and that reflects I believe two lobbying trainings conducted in the month, and we try to keep the class size 50, 60, 70 max. Those are they're live online, but they're live trainings, and that's a number that will remain until we change the system, which we may. Until we change the system, that's kind of what that number is going to look like. That's the amount of training the agency itself is doing. We will, under the expanded staffing plan, if commissioners approve it, we will be adding 2 additional trainers and 2 additional lobbying associates in the training department. But primarily, at least in concept, this is by no means final, primarily to train trainers in the agencies. I think that's where the resource will go because of the expansion that we have from 30-some-odd thousand individuals to 300,000.
Commissioner Groen.
I'm sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not
Go ahead.
finished.
Sure.
I have on page 7, the record access request 13 and those provided 4. The reason for 4 versus 13 or more is that I'm just trying to find out why was only 4 provided when the request was 13. Is it that those don't fall within the records that's supposed to be provided, or what is it?
No, it's. I mean, we can go into greater detail if you want, but the time it takes to respond to a request, within 5 days of receiving the FOIL request, you have to respond and either provide the records. It's rare that an agency can do it, but it's possible within 5 days you can do it, or you have to provide a time frame within which you expect to do that. And if there are complexities or other issues, you're supposed to discuss those with the requester. Some requests take more time to comply with, and some take less time. Some are quite substantial, and some ask for simply one document.
And again,
Those take much less time.
with respect to some requests, they simply cannot be fulfilled because they don't fall within the Freedom of Information Act, or they are specifically excluded from disclosure.
Okay, and I guess
By
we
state
have
or federal law.
By state or federal law. I see. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Groen.
Going back to training for a minute, the people that you're training that colored staff are training right now, are they agency trainers? Is it part of the trainer training you're doing, or is this?
Not in this month. In this month, it is just straight training, signups.
Oh, okay. And do we know, are any of the agencies who were previously responsible for training their staff, to the extent the training for filers isn't really going to change significantly, is that still going forward?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So there are other training numbers out there.
Yeah, yes, and we, it's on the agenda. We can get ahead of it.
Yeah,
but-
let's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else here?
And of course, if you have any other questions, feel free to approach any of us after the meeting or offline if you have any questions, or if something comes up in the course of the meeting, please let us know.
Are we stopping and recruiting?
Staffing and recruiting update, essentially what I said, we've all but filled out the executive ranks. We have 2 director and deputy director. There's an accepted offer. We have to go through the normal hiring process for the deputy, the intake process for that, background checking and so on. And we are on the cusp of extending an offer for the director of that division. So we're very close. And then there's some filling out of the ranks remaining to take place in the communications division. I should add, when Emily DeSantis comes in as director, she'll have the opportunity. We have solicited, we have posted one of the positions, the other position, open position, posted, and she'll have the opportunity to select her staff. And we have additional positions in the investigation and enforcement division we will be filling for investigative counsel and for investigators at various levels. And a number of individuals have been interviewed, final stages on a couple of those. And some of the other hires will be left, the final decisions will be left to the incoming director and deputy director to make those determinations.
Any questions here? Comments? Carol?
Excuse me, I think with the background noise, if everyone can speak up, we'll hear
Sure.
that. It's a little difficult to hear.
Okay. Yeah, Claudia, and we can barely hear you as well.
Okay, sorry. I have a question about investigations. And I'm just wondering, this only gives us a picture of what's present between 2023 and 2020.
Can we make it any louder?
Hold on, Claudia, 1 second. All right, Commissioner Edwards, try again.
I have a question about investigations. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
What we typically get is what's current between, year to year, 2022 to 2023. Is it possible that we can also have a list of all investigations that are still in the pipeline, so we have a sense of its longevity? I know we've had some concerns about cases that have been.
That's coming up, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
And we need to work on your volume too, so we'll try to figure out what's going on there.
She could call in.
Right. All right.
All right, can we?
Sure.
All right, the budget update for the month is under tab B. We are continuing to project the year-end remaining balance in the personal services side of the budget, and that's simply because the staffing levels have been below projected, below budgeted throughout the year. We have been able to shift some of the funds from that over to the non-personal services side, where we're running in the opposite direction, where we have something of a shortfall. In addition, we will be, and you'll see that the number has gone down for the projected remaining balance. It's down to just under 1.4 million. We had originally been looking at something just south of 2 million and then down to 1.6, and now we're below 1.4. We have been able to retain the services of a consultant to work with information technology services, New York's information technology services, which we will need in order to create the computer systems for tracking in the interim, the training that we're going to be doing, and that will be done workforce-wide, and eventually a permanent system that will have the capability, at the very least, to schedule, monitor, track, and report on compliance with training requirements. We talked about that before. That's the system that we'd like to see in place in the fall. But we will be retaining the consultant, a dedicated consultant to do that out of this year's funds, which will have a favorable effect. We'll be taking the pressure off next year's budget.
When we audit the financial statements, do we do that technologically, or do we do that just pulling various financials?
It's both. We can do a presentation on the process if you like. At the next meeting, we are in the process actually of upgrading the audit software that the audit and review division, which is a combined division between lobbying and ethics. So the FDS division and the lobbying will share personnel to conduct the audits and the targeted reviews and so on. And they are in the process of upgrading the software that they use.
Because I read a report the other day from another group that surveys nationwide,
Yes.
suggesting that it should be done, obviously save a lot of money once you get it implemented, suggesting that other states are doing it more and more by using technology.
Yeah, and we're looking at that. We are in the process of upgrading the software. The system that's currently in place, and the new system would be an upgrade of that, is one where we partnered with the controllers office on that, OSC, and using a package that they were using. And we're looking at now whether they're still using that particular vendor's software. But this is the latest iteration, and the head of our unit thinks that the new package is a significant improvement. It's not a major change, but it is an improvement over the system they've been using.
Anything else on the budget? Now the new budget, the executive budget proposal in your written testament.
That's under tab E. And you've previously seen our budget request. I have now included the extract from the executive budget, the governor's budget proposal, which is now before the legislature. The hearings are continuing. We were not asked to testify. However, we thought it made sense to submit written testimony. And we've done that essentially asking that the legislature approve the amounts that have been extended to us. I should explain that our entire request was granted with an additional increment, an additional $193,000 over the amounts that we had requested for personal services and non-personal services. If you look at the extract from the budget, the proposed budget under agency appropriations for our agency, it shows a net change from 2023 of $94,231. That's the delta between a top-up payment we had received last year to cover retro payments we had to make for employees that were triggered by certain union settlements. There's no anticipation of retros this year, so we didn't, and we don't expect, we will not get a retro reimbursement. However, we are being given a contingency of $193,000 over our budget request to cover contingencies of the year.
Yes.
I appreciate, I thought that your letter was very good, but we still don't know what the legislature is going to do. Do we communicate in addition to the communications with the second floor? Do we do anything with respect to urging legislators to support this? Because obviously Governor Hochul can't just decide it.
We have had one meeting on the Senate side. We are planning a meeting on the Assembly side. So we're moving on that front, and we've made that point. We would like to think the stars are properly aligned, but we're not assuming anything, and that's why we proactively put the testimony in, just to confirm the necessity. And in fact, I think it was over the weekend in the Times Union, there was an article essentially on a different subject,
Yes.
but the press did pick up the fact that we had submitted written testimony
I just,
and had excerpted certain portions.
given what's happening in Albany and the tensions that obviously exist, I just think it's very important that we lobby behind the scenes, so to speak, the legislature. I have no idea how we should do that, but I think we should really take that into strong account.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, and there are obviously a number of issues that we do want to take up with the legislature, in addition to the budget issues. So our goal is to have a positive relationship in terms of things that we need legislatively, and of course the budget.
Sure. And just to reinforce Commissioner Cardozo's point, where it's appropriate, we should let legislators know how important this budget is to us and to ensure that they're going to support it.
Absolutely, and that is our goal. That is our goal. Any other questions on the budget? And we'll keep commissioners advised if we learn of any developments on that. I should add, there's one other, well, there's one other item in the budget bill, and that was a clarification of the appointment section in ACRA. The original version of ACRA had an allocation of terms so that there would be a rotation built into the commission structure that allocated 4-year terms, 2-year terms, with multiple appointments permitted, and in one instance, a 1-year term. In the statute, there was no methodology for determining which appointees got which, other than the obvious situation of particular
Where there was only one
legislative, the majority
appointee.
leader
Right.
and temporary president, and the governor had more than one appointment each, and the total actually only added up to 9 out of 11. So there was a little bit of a disparity. The independent review committee, the law deans, had resolved that with a recommendation for an allocation. That is now replicated in the budget bill in major form. There's one little disparity because the bill allocates not by determination of the appointing authority, but rather the time at which the appointment was made. And we need to clarify that with the chamber and with the legislature, because we have one disparity we have to resolve, where the preference stated by the appointing authority would produce a different result than the statutory priority would produce. So we're going to see clarification on that.
It's clear? Questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yeah, Sandy, I assume that the budget that we're looking at anticipates a full commission and full staffing. Is that correct?
The budget actually contains an approval of 21 additional full-time equivalent employees being added to our ranks. So in the existing plan, although prior agencies didn't have the money to get to that level as a result of various increases, that mandatory increases that took place over the years, we will be going from 47 approved FTEs from a budget perspective to 68, and that's specifically in the governor's proposal. So we will be substantially growing the agency over the coming year. And based on our projections and previously circulated the proposals that we have, the low end and the high end, those complicated spreadsheets that we did bring us, depending on how our negotiations go, either with a small surplus, and now we'll have an additional surplus because of the top-up amount, or a small deficit, largely covered by the top-up payment. But that depends on whether hirings take place at the low end or the high end, or somewhere in the middle, in the various bands for designations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carvalho? Okay. Anyone else? Carol?
I have,
Commissioner Edwards?
yeah, thank you. I want to go back to
Hold on one second, Commissioner Edwards. We want to turn up the volume on our end. Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the discussion we were having with regard to how we approach the legislature for support for our budget. And now, while I support our doing that now, it makes sense. I hope that looking forward, we think about ways in which we can move away from, quote unquote, I won't say lobbying, but certainly trying to influence them to support our budget. And I would be interested in knowing for staff pursuing the possibility of changing the legislation so that our funding is determined by some sort of formula based on the total budget, as opposed to being at the wishes of the legislature. If people come unhappy with our view of what we're doing, it's very easy to squash our budget to minimize our effects. And so, again, while I support approach the way it's been recommended, I think as we look forward into terms of meeting our independence that we begin looking at ways other than lobbying the people that we're supposed to be having oversight over.
I can appreciate that. I don't know if you heard that, Commissioner Edwards is proposing that we perhaps seek some kind of legislation that would create a formula for our budget based on some sort of baseline number, and I'm assuming some percentage, so that we don't have to lobby the very people that we have oversight for a budget. I can just say in my experience, we ended up being able to affect something similar with the Civilian Complaint Review Board in New York City. It's now a percentage of the police department's budget, depending on headcount, and it is only affected if the mayor declares a fiscal emergency, which, as it turns out, is exactly what happened because of the pandemic. But now that the pandemic is over, that sort of baseline amount that the CCRB is due every year should not change, and hopefully it would only increase. So I have no idea how complicated it would be to do something like that for this commission, but I think as a principle, it's worth us at least investigating.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that? Okay. So we will ask staff, recognizing that there's a lot on their plate and that we have a number of things in the queue for legislative attention, to add this to that list, and then let's talk about a plan and a process for all the things that we have that we'd like the legislature to at some point consider.
Don't we have
Yeah,
committees?
so noted, and that is a dynamic list. We as staff, in connection with the committee process, have noted a number of issues that we believe merit legislative attention, whether it's in this cycle or in the next cycle. But there are quite a number of things, and these are things that go back, in some instances, some number of years.
But don't
Some go to structural aspects of the agency, and some have to do with the substantive laws that we administer.
Commissioner Edwards?
Don't we have a committee to address legislative issues?
We will talk about, we will discuss that at our meeting on the 14th among the committees where this kind of thing actually falls.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And I should say staff has attempted to allocate the issues, but also concentrated them in one committee as well, depending upon how commissioners think it best to approach the overall legislative agenda of the commission.
Any other questions on this? Okay, Executive Law 94A and lobbying and training and tracking, etc.
Yes, we literally just finalized, and we'll be sending to the legislative leadership and to the governor our report on training and training compliance for the fourth calendar quarter of 2022. It'll be our second quarterly report. Slightly higher, slightly higher percentage of compliance from the 395 some odd agencies that are involved in this training on the executive side of government. So we will have 341 agencies reporting to us. The reports continue to trickle in. We have now asked the agencies, even though we're doing quarterly reporting, to report to us on a monthly basis, so we can try to stay on top of the statistics and have them stay on top of the reporting. But we've got 341 of 395 or so agencies reporting for that quarter. So that's from October 1 to December 31, 2022. They report 13,379 individuals received ethics training. That's an improvement over the prior quarter, which was effectively from the inception of the commission on July 8th. through the end of September. That was 12,394 individuals trained. So we're getting up to above 25,000. The target is 300,000 within the year. And we previously discussed what our approach is going to be on that. But the report has gone out, or will be going out today. It's been finalized. I've signed it. And it will be submitted. So we're moving along on that front. Any questions on it?
Commissioner Grown
Did
again.
you see that report since
Oh,
it's going out today?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
During today's meeting even?
Yeah, during a break,
Okay.
we can print it out.
Commissioner Cardoza, did you have? Anyone else?
One other question about training, maybe this isn't the right time, but has anybody tried to do a cost calculation of what the enhanced mandate is going to cost the state as a whole? We know that for this agency alone, it's got the IT cost that the consultant's been hired, the recognized need for at least 4 additional staff. But since, as I understand it, the bulk of the training will be delivered by the agency ethics officer. Have they?
Live training, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Live on.
Have they kind of, I would expect in their individual budgets, put forth some kind of number to accommodating that new mandate, such that we know what the cost of this mandate is statewide?
We don't currently know the number. We have urged them to do exactly that. And I think when we come out of the other end of the budget side, there was some reporting on that in the press within the past month or so. But yeah, I mean, that's a number. And we have some proposals as well to get arms around other ways of doing that. So we will be developing that. Absolutely. I mean, that from inception, that has been a high priority, not just for us, but for every agency that's affected that. So we're mindful of that. We're looking at it. And in the course of the overall budget process, we're going to be able to capture a much better idea. Right now, the first focus is finding out what they're capable of doing, and this collection of data is going to illustrate that. And then the additional resources they need varies from agency to agency, and we've asked them to be mindful of that and spec that out. But we can talk about that. Right. I think it's kind of a committee issue that we can address on the 14th.
And picking up on that, I think it'd be very helpful if each of the commissioners was asked to take the training course. So, because we all need to learn it ourselves. And as I've discussed briefly with Carol, I think if we could all get a link to both the training of the lobbyists and training of the lobbyist clients, we could all appreciate what is being done.
Indeed.
Yeah, we have plans in place. We've had that discussion with you and we have discussed that.
But I would note that it's online. I mean, I watched the lobby and I watched the train the trainer training.
I think if Carol could send out a link just as a reminder to all of us, it would be helpful, as I discussed with the rest.
Okay. And we'll pick this up later too. So on to anything else there?
No, that's it. I will circulate the report as soon as we have a break.
Communications update?
That's simple. Today is the last day of the contractual arrangement with Marathon Strategies. And I know the commissioners generally have been quite pleased with the work they've done in enhancing the commission's ability to project its message and to get word out. And they've been extreme. In my judgment, they've been extremely effective. They've had some very positive coverage. I think the agency has been able to be more responsive to the press than it has been in the past, and we've worked out lots of strategies. So I personally want to thank them for the work they've done.
And I agree. I want to reiterate that as well. I think that they did a great job for us on short notice. Proposed regulations authorizing issuance of subpoenas, etc.
Yeah, let me say, staff has proposed, and we have in place, the commission's approval, a series of largely conforming amendments to the commission's body of regulations. And tabs F through I have various proposals that are in place for the most part on emergency adoptions that expired earlier this month. For the most part, with the exception of the lobbying training requirements, they're all right for permanent adoption. But by and large, and I can walk through them and answer any questions you have individually. But by and large, they're really intended, they are intended to align the commission's regulations with the requirements of ECRA. And some are as simple as just changing the name of the agency from prior agency's name to colon, or correcting the statutory cross-references where the part numbers have changed in section 94 of the executive law. For example, the first amendment under tab F adds a new section to part 941, which are our adjudicatory and appellate regulations for the agency. And that specific provision implements provision in ECRA that permits the commission to delegate to the executive director on notice to the chair the ability to issue subpoenas. And all we've done with respect to that is take that statutory provision and put it into the regulations, because the delegation under the provision in ECRA is required to be embodied in a regulation. It's important to have that ability because under ECRA, in contrast to PIRA, the old version of section 94 in the executive law, the typical pattern was when a preliminary matter was turned into a formal investigation was opened by vote of the commission, the subpoena plan would be adopted. That step has been eliminated in ECRA. So it's now up to staff or the commission independently to elevate a matter from a preliminary review to an investigation without a vote of the commission. And my understanding is that's why subpoenas can now be issued on delegation to staff. We have added to that because we have the need to conduct informal inquiries, a similar procedure for staff communications. Under section 9411, commission approval is required if there's any disclosure of confidential information. We treat every incoming complaint or referral as confidential. And staff, without the appropriate authorization, is not going to talk outside the agency. We may speak with the complainant confidentially, but we certainly would not speak beyond that unless an agency has been involved in some way, in some kind of proceeding involving the individual has brought us into it, so they're aware of the situation. We won't do that without approval. 94.3-A. On the same conditions as a subpoena, so that we don't have to revert to a subpoena, we can make an informal inquiry, allow staff to make those informal inquiries on notice to the chair. And we have added to that notifying all the commissioners. Under the statute, the notification would come at the next commission meeting to the commissioners at large. But I'm now circulating those notifications under the emergency adoption of that provision. To all commissioners, and it allows us to keep these matters moving between meetings.
Commissioner Cardozo.
I just want to confirm that since we now have a committee that's been formed to look into the whole question of delegation, that if that, we had some informal discussions about that yesterday, if the committee decides to propose a change to that, that there's nothing we're doing by adopting these regulations that would preclude a further change in how those delegations work. Is that-
No, and we've looked at the law, and there's nothing that we've found that indicates that there's any impediment to altering something after it's been amended. There's nothing in SAPA, there's nothing, Megan has looked at it, Megan Develop, as you requested, and we find no authority that would inhibit a subsequent change.
Thank you.
I have a question.
In the interest of consistency, of course, we'd like to have a consistent body of rules that we can follow. This is, as far as subpoenas is concerned, this is an implementation of a statutory authorization, as opposed to taking on an authority, as far as the subpoenas are concerned, under the broad authority of the commission to delegate to the executive director and to staff, functions that don't require a commission vote.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Ayers,
Thank you.
sorry.
So this is just a general thing. Is it appropriate, and I don't know, this may be getting into talk about committees, so feel free to defer me, but in terms of commissioners providing feedback on regulations, one thing that I expect to be kind of a pain about sometimes is plain English and looking for opportunities to make our work more comprehensible to the public. And so, I'm going to raise things like, why do we call it a 15-day letter when nobody in the public could possibly know what that means without looking up the regs? We could call it a notice of allegations, which is still a little bit bureaucratic, but at least somebody from the public can get a handle on what kind of thing that is. And sort of general matters of like, can we avoid thereto and thereof in the regs, and can we shrink sentences down? What would be the way for, because I don't want to just do that at a meeting when we've got this here, what would be the appropriate way for a commissioner to provide suggestions or feedback like that?
Email works.
Yeah.
Email
When it
is
comes around,
fine.
then, okay,
I
great.
don't always check my texts, so.
No, I don't like to redline in text either.
And it's difficult.
If you know how to do it, we'd certainly be interested.
No,
Right,
please.
no, right.
If we could just have one, email works very well.
Okay, so I'll do that.
In fact, it's perfect for that, whether you do it in text or by attachment, whatever methodology. But I mean, we try to circulate everything that we can for input.
It is my understanding, can you hear me with this? It is my understanding that we will be reviewing this at the next committee meeting and making some more permanent changes. So we can consult with you at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I will say
get
is
it.
that the entire body of regulations, the statute does call for a global review by this commission. All we are attempting to do here is have an operating body of regulations that
Conforms with the new law.
yeah, I mean, to the letter of the new law. It's really only ostensible stuff, the name of the agency, cross references. This one is a little bit different because it does have a kind of substantive impact, but it is specifically provided for as far as subpoenas are concerned in the statute. And we think along with that, the parallel would be to have authorization on notice to the chair and now notice to all commissioners, the ability to communicate between meetings, to advance matters and not have things come to the door and not be able to even make a simple phone call to a relevant person without having that meeting.
Of the four listed here, sort of bringing the regs in conformity to the new law, in addition to this delegation of authority being substantive, would you describe anything else in any of these four as also being substantive and not just a kind of procedural aligning of the regs?
I should say we did get a comment from a group of good government groups, watchdog groups. They had no issue, I should say, with the subpoena delegation of authority. They did have a question in the overall amendments to Part 941, which has a definition of victim. We had imported into the regulations the same definition that appeared in the statute. The good government groups felt that was too narrow. a definition. In particular, they took issue with the requirement that the harm suffered be a direct consequence of the statutory violation. In staff's view, we're stuck unless the legislation is changed, unless there's an amendment, and that may be part of the legislative agenda.
Yeah, I think it should be.
With direct, but we do think we can add more texture, if you will, to the definition of a victim in the statute. And we do and it's section, it's 941.2
Under which
L. It's in the 941 amendment, so it's in the second
tab G.
tab G.
I'm sorry.
The consequence of that is who gets notified at certain.
Yes,
stages, so
that
that's
is,
why
yeah.
I'm not-
I mean, if the victim is the complainant, they're going to get notice in any event. It's a situation where either on referral or from another agency or on the commission's own initiative. And we do have instances of that where we will commence a proceeding and the victim may not be a complainant.
And when you say we're constrained, it means the statute, in your view, prohibits us from notifying folks who aren't in that category, and therefore we may not be able to redefine victim. The other alternative would be to say, well, no, but we're going to widen the scope of notification on our own initiative, but I gather we couldn't do that.
Because of 9411, which limits our ability to communicate. And there is a question as to the scope of the commission's ability. Also in part 941, point 16, we do have a series of situations where staff and or the commission, based on the public interest, can make additional disclosures. That's a rarely exercised authority that's in there, and something this commission should look at. It was adopted by the prior agency sort of late in its life, and didn't. There's not much history on its application, but that would be another approach, and it may well be, I think, a subject for statutory legislative consideration in changing that. But we thought we could perhaps be more descriptive in defining victim or explaining victim, sort of in our interpretive role, as opposed to in our mandatory role, and define victim to include, without limitation, individuals alleging. Maybe without limitation is one of those technical terms.
Yeah, I'm not actually even sure what it means to.
Oh, okay. Well, it means without limitation. But I understand. Individuals, the idea is not to exclude anyone by virtue of our example.
We don't exclude.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. Individuals alleging harm of any kind, including physical, emotional, or reputational injury or loss from any violation of law that is subject to investigation under the jurisdiction of the commission. But we're staying away from the causal connection because it seems that the legislature was somewhat specific in wanting the harm to be the direct result. That's one quasi, arguably substantive-ish
Okay. Right.
kind of change. It's not exactly what has been requested, but we think it goes in that direction. If I'm not mistaken, Megan, we would have to renotice on a shortened period if we add that definition to Part 941.
Yeah, we'd have to do a no surprise rulemaking. It'll be a 45-day.
So we'd have to put it out again. And do we need to extend the emergency on that, or are we?
Yes.
So we'd have to extend the emergency adoption on that. But that is the only other
Okay. Great.
change that I would characterize as.
So now, do
potentially substantive.
we need actions on all four of these? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a good question.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, thank you. I'm to be clear about what you're looking at, but I'm assuming it's in F. And if you look at paragraph A, the last 4 lines, it makes reference to giving the executive director authorization to make decisions to investigate or elevate it to the commission. Is there some criteria that the executive director will be using in order to make that decision?
If I understand correctly, yes, the the statute, 9410, gives staff the authority to elevate a matter from a preliminary review to an investigation. It allows the commission to do that, but it prescribes no procedure. But it vests staff, and this is a material change in my view from prior law, which required a vote of the commission, frankly, special voting in many circumstances of the commission within 60 days of a verified complaint or receipt of a referral or the issuance of a 15-day letter on the commission's own initiative to take a vote on whether or not to open an investigation.
So I think what Commissioner Edwards is asking is, what are the criteria, if any, for staff deciding to elevate an initial inquiry to a full investigation? Where do those criteria?
Yeah, and those criteria are statutory.
Elevated to the commission.
Right. He's saying that those criteria are in the legislation. You want to say more
Yes,
about that?
and this is in executive law, section 94, sub 10, subdivision D. Commission staff shall review and investigate as appropriate any information in the nature of a complaint or referral received by the commission or initiated by the commission, including through its review of media reports and other information, where there is specific and credible evidence that a violation of section 73, 73A or 74 of the Public Officers Law, section 107 of the Civil Service Law, or article 1A of the Legislative Law, that's the Lobbying Act, by a person or entity subject to the jurisdiction of the commission, including members of the legislature and legislative employees and candidates for members of the legislature. And then if following a preliminary review, this is now down to F, and this is after we've confirmed to the complainant, if there is a complainant, that we've received the complaint. If following a preliminary review of any complaint or referral, the commission or commission staff decides to elevate such preliminary review into an investigation, written notice shall be provided to the respondent, et cetera. So that's the 15-day letter. That's the elevation. So the criteria, at least as I read it, is that we believe after reviewing those reports, there's specific and credible evidence that a violation of a law, a statute within our jurisdiction
And I
has
think,
occurred.
yeah, I think and Commissioner Edwards, I don't want to put, I don't want to attribute words to you that aren't applicable, but it seems to me that perhaps what Commissioner Edwards is getting at is that there's a lot of discretion still left for the staff.
Right.
And how do we guarantee, or how do we get as close as we can to something that's subjective, that's not totally dependent on staff discretion? And I think that's the level that what's there now still creates a level of discomfort, because if the legislators were worried about the commissioners being influenced on these things, why couldn't staff? And in ways that we don't even know. I'm not going to ask that we try to resolve that now, but I do think some committee, the special committee perhaps, should take a look at that question and come back to us with some either commentary or direction.
Yeah, and let me say the other part of the equation is, and this is why I think this is a material change from the prior version, the PIRA version of section 94. This does come back to the commission before a matter can be, after investigation, can be advanced to an evidentiary hearing.
And we get that.
Or settled. So that's where the, well.
Let me speak for Commissioner Edwards. Here's where our discomfort is. The staff gets to decide what rises to the level of an investigation. And we may, and I know you will report to us on inquiries, investigations, and then we decide how to proceed. But there are steps in there that we just aren't clear about, that again leave it to staff's discretion. And we want to be clear, as clear as we possibly can, about what criteria, objective criteria actually go into that.
That's
So
right.
we can say that you check these 4 boxes
Right.
before you decided something shouldn't be a full investigation. I mean, that's metaphor, right? But that's kind of what we're after. Not that you looked at a law and decided the interpretation of law or rule or reg was X, so you're not going, it's not going to proceed to an investigation. But something more substantive than that, something more objective than that. Am I getting at this correctly?
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay.
we don't want to put ourselves in a position to find that the staff made a decision for whatever reason, and we didn't agree with it. And so at least I want to have a clear understanding of, giving you the authority, but understanding what criteria you have to use that authority. I think under previous commissions, things fell through the cracks because the commissioners learned after the fact an investigation either went forward or didn't go forward, and we're left holding the bag for it. And I want to.
No, it was, well, under the statute, we'll just talk about the statute. Under the prior statute, staff did not have the discretion, if it made a determination that there was or wasn't credible evidence of a violation of the statute. It had to go to the commission in any event, and the commission voted. In some instances, the commission couldn't arrive at a decision, so an investigation by default didn't take place. This statute, at least one interpretation, I understand there's plenty of room for discussion, and there should be robust discussion of it. This statute is intended to have the commission serve that function not at inception, before the information has been fully developed, but rather when a body of information has been developed. And the statute specifically requires staff to present both sides of the issue when staff believes the investigation is completed. Staff is required by the statute affirmatively to present the evidence for and the evidence against. And then it's up to the commission to decide whether it wants more information and there should be additional investigation conducted, whether it believes the matter should advance to hearing, whether the matter should be settled, or whether it should be dismissed. So as I read the statute, and I understand there may be room for alternative interpretations, and I certainly don't disagree, that the bounds of the preliminary steps should be understood and the amount of discretion that resides in staff should be understood. But the basic plan of the statute is to, if staff believes there's enough evidence to advance it, to allow staff to develop the information and present the commission with a complete record for it to decide based on that record whether or not the matter merits further action, or should be dismissed, or should be settled. And that may be a tension.
I think that's exactly the tension, and I think that we should let a committee, whether it's a special committee or when others take this up, and then come back and make a recommendation. I think what we're wrestling with here is whether it was the old system where you had the commission, or this new system where we have the staff with more discretion. You've got human beings in a highly political process where at any point along the way, somebody's going to try to influence that process to their advantage. And what we're trying to do is to limit that as much as possible. We'll never be able to eliminate all of that, but we should try our best to get as close as we can.
And what I think, if I may, what I think I'm hearing is you are looking for the staff to articulate the justification
Each
for
step
whatever
along the way.
determination.
So we're going to go from inquiry to investigation, investigation to hearing, hearing to some form of conclusion. Every point at which there's any discretion on the part of the staff in that process, we need to know what's governing that or controlling that discretion.
How and why we got there.
Exactly.
And I would add, we have to be practical because of the number of matters that are here. And, if a lower level staff person is asking for something, you perhaps treat that in a different way than if a high level commissioner is doing,
Correct,
either asking or doing something.
correct. Yeah, yeah, no, it's a different matter. I guess I can say, it's a different matter, just by way of example, if we're dealing with an inquiry about someone being able to do something with their local, with their daughter or Girl Scout, or their son's Boy Scouts, just because the Boy Scouts also do something with the agency where the person works, as opposed to staff making a decision about whether or not somebody can write a book.
Thank you. That's it.
That's
That's it.
And those are the kinds of things that we will wrestle with.
he will.
Continually.
He will.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
just
much.
bear in mind that's different from investigations.
Of course,
We're talking
right,
here about
right. I know, we're
investigations.
talking here about, so anything from informal opinions to a full investigation, right? And staff has a lot of discretion in that, and we need to pay a lot of attention to that.
And if I may, we see in our reports that some of the things that the staff handles, such as whether a commissioner should be allowed to attend a convention and be reimbursed for it.
Right.
I'm not sure that's something that really needs our
I agree.
heavy attention. Yeah, we're talking about things that are public and larger in scope than basically this kind of pro forma things that just need to be looked at.
For sure.
Having
And I would say that anything that involves a member of the legislature, statewide elected official, anything at the commissioner level should always require a special level of consideration on the part of this commission.
Right.
Okay. So we have some direction. Carol, you're looking, did you have a comment
No,
here?
I can tell you what we need if you guys are done with your discussion.
Okay, please.
So if you want to adopt this on a permanent basis,
Mhm.
we need a motion to adopt on a permanent basis. Now,
Each
we
of
also-
these.
we also-
No, they vary according to the particular proposal.
Right,
So
this is for-
start with 941.3A,
Is
right,
this
attachment F.
and number 5 on the agenda?
number 5 on the
Correct.
agenda.
Now, permanent adoptions are effective upon publication in the state register, and that takes a couple weeks. So with all of these dates going around and when the emergency expires on this, which is 3/10, it won't be in the register until 3/15. So technically, we need two things today.
We need
We
both an
notice of
emergency to
permanent
cover
adoption and a readoption of the emergency.
emergency to cover that gap. Is that the case with any of these others?
It depends on what you're doing.
Let's say we agree to do a permanent adoption of F, G, H, and
So if
I.
you go down to G,
Mhm.
if you just need a notice of permanent adoption. of the
Okay.
proceeding
Well,
without changing it.
No, well, on G, we want to, I mean, the commissioners are amenable to it, have it slightly expanded, change the definition of
A
victim.
victim, okay.
It might be easier to go one by one.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Mhm.
Okay, all right, so we'll entertain Commissioner Groenewegen and then Commissioner Whittingham.
I was just gonna suggest that before we do permanent adoption, I know it's not ideal to do repeated emergencies, but it's known to happen for several years sometimes. And I think we've heard Commissioner Ayers talk about the goal of having very good regulations that are in plain English, that are easy for our regulated public to understand, and rather than increase the workload on staff to do multiple permanent adoptions, I would say just there's value in continuing the emergency adoption. It gives us the ability to act, but it doesn't entail all the
If I could respond, by and large, I don't disagree with the merit of that. However, with respect to the adjudicatory regulations, where we do have active matters and we do want to pursue a number of matters, especially as we staff up, I would feel more comfortable in operating under, even if they're subsequently going to be changed in some way, under permanent regulations. than under temporary regulations as we move through the enforcement process.
The advantage being?
The advantage being that we don't have arguments in Article 78 that, Judge, these are temporary, they're on an emergency basis, they could change at any time. We think this ought to go back. There's a history of inordinate delays in some of our proceedings. I don't want to go into some of the rulings and so on that we've contended with. We can do that in executive session. But that would be a concern of mine.
Commissioner Whittingham and then Commissioner Ayers.
Yeah, I guess my point is very similar to Commissioner, where I feel like maybe we make it a priority and say for the next meeting, these are the 4 we're going to ask to be permanent. Give, for example, Commissioner Ayers an opportunity to review it, to put it down, and the committee that you have put together to review these things, and make it known today that this will be on for permanent. And so give us another month to get it done. Because if it's so important that we don't continue to have emergency, as our executive director have said, fine, but give us another month at least and put it at the top of the agenda and allow the commissioners to review it and to do things that they're saying they want to do. Not just review and say, okay, this is what we have heard someone say, that our newest commissioners say, I really want to do X. Let's give her the chance.
Commissioner Ayers.
Well, thanks. I want to, just say thank you. Appreciate that. But I also want to distinguish, the concern about plain English versus the substantive concerns that Commissioner Edwards is raising, which sound very significant to me. And so I wonder if the concerns that you've raised about the possible effect on uncertainty. I mean, it seems to me that there's still that uncertainty because this is a public meeting, and we've just said that we want to revisit things. So if you notice a permanent reg, but you have also made public that you plan to revisit it, I think from the perspective of a former litigator, that's still, we were under that situation all the time where we were defending a reg that was going to be changed, and we all knew it was going to be changed, and it was annoying to the courts, but everybody sort of figured out a strategy. But I don't know that there's a difference in terms of whether you've noticed the permanent reg with an intent to come back and change it, or whether you've done an emergency reg. In fact, I kind of worry about the compliance with the spirit of SAPA and of public notice and comment. If we're putting something out for notice and comment, but we know we might change it, then it feels kind of like we're wasting some of the public's time by asking them for comment on something that we ourselves don't think we're ready to fully stand behind. But all of that said, I recognize there are operational pressures, and so if there is something that an authority that you all think you need and don't have, or something that's interfering with the commission's work, I think we should know that so that we can. And I don't know whether that can be solved with an emergency reg or a permanent reg. I don't want to mess up what you all need to keep going forward.
Sure. Commissioner Cardoza and then Commissioner
We've
Carvalho.
known this overall problem. We've known it for a number of months. And based upon the discussions we've had lately, this is not something you can just spend an hour in solving. So I think it's a mistake to think that in the next month we're going to solve these problems. So I don't know what conclusion that flows from that, but the idea of saying we're going to do this next month we're going to decide this next month, I think is not realistic as a practical matter.
Commissioner Carvalho.
And that was just an example.
I kind of think it was our plan to address this at the next meeting after we had the opportunity to review this, the reports we've been working on. And yeah, that was my understanding. Our plan was that we would, if we needed to extend it, we would, but that there would not be a permanent change at this meeting before we've had an opportunity for the special committee to review it as in depth as we need to.
Sure.
And I think it is possible to come up with a resolution for next month. Right. And I do believe that was our plan.
So it seems like the emphasis from the staff's point of view is on the delegation of authority for subpoenas and other sort of matters related to inquiry, investigation, etc. For a permanent adoption with the understanding that we will review down the road, with that little wrinkle that there's a gap, so we'll have to do two things, a permanent and a sort of emergency on this one. For the other three, G, H, and I, you're looking for permanent adoptions on those?
Yes, we are on 941, except for, if the commission is amenable to broadening the definition of victim. So that would require on 941, a shortened, renewed notice and comment period. But, bear in mind, the conformance in 941 is conforming the investigative enforcement process to the regulations, which have changed. We no longer have the 60-day vote. We do have the elevation. I understand that the commissioners are wanting to take a look at how that discretion is going to be exercised by staff. But that's a process, I believe, and I would at least like to have conformance on some basis. At the very least, we have to have rules going forward governing our investigative enforcement process that are consistent with the statutory mandates.
I think we all need an understanding as to what the difference is between adopting and as permanent and then amending, or continuing as a temporary emergency and amending. Is there a difference in enforceability, in the efforts that's being made? What is the difference?
If it's adopted permanently or as an emergency, it's in effect, correct?
Right.
So the rule's in effect. Just because, I will say this, just because you do a notice of adoption on a permanent basis for these particular changes does not mean that next month you might tackle another regulation in more depth that you covered here, that you maybe changed the name from J-Code to colon, but that does in certain regulations. But you'll get in the weeds of the regulation at another time. And so it does not imply, just because we adopt it today, either as an emergency or a permit, doesn't imply that we would not be going forward. As far as effectiveness, though, they're both the same.
And procedurally for the staff and for us to do it, is there a better way?
Well, staff would say it's better to adopt on a permanent basis so we don't have to keep continuing these notices, but we can do whatever you'd like.
Well, we do have to certify that there is a basis for the emergency need for the regulation, and maybe we should go into executive session to talk about the implications, if there are any, in that.
For a certain thing.
And if I may just echo Commissioner Cardozo's comment, this is a project that's more than a month. If we're going to do it right, we've really got to dig in and come up with a comprehensive plan. To do it piecemeal, I think, would be a mistake. So let's. So
on the basis of that,
let's do that.
Yeah, I would recommend permanent adoption of all of these with the necessary wrinkles. So we got a wrinkle in the first one where we have to do permanent and temporary to cover the gap. And then with number 6, it has to do with the definition of victim. If we're going to add some language there, then we have to have a posting. So that would be, I'm assuming, a continued temporary.
It would be a revised rulemaking and emergency adoption.
For number
tab H,
tab G. Yeah. And then the other two we would adopt.
Well, actually,
the last one is an emergency.
Is an emergency.
Which is 8, roomnet 8, attachment I. So that's the lobbying training amendments.
Yes.
The public comment period has not run yet. It runs March 5th. So but it will expire before the next meeting. So we'll just have to continue the emergency there and hopefully be able to permanently adopt that in
Okay.
March meeting.
Well, let's hear from Commissioner Ayers, and then let's take these one at a time and see what we do.
Sure, just briefly, I regret I have to step out until 1:15.
Sure,
so
no worries.
I'm going to leave you all to vote. But before I go, I just wanted to say, if I'm reading this correctly, with the exception of the victim language, everything in tab G is pretty much just cleaning up. I'm sorry, everything beyond 941.3, there's a lot of just cleaning up the name, which I don't see any obstacle to, and the other to doing on a permanent basis. And the other thing is, I do wonder whether some of the changes we're talking about are things where what the commission, for example, the standards, the issue that Commissioner Edwards was raising, it seems to me that we're asking for more standards, but that doesn't imply a change in what's already there. It's that we're ready to say yes to what's here. We agree. I think this may be true as to a lot of it.
But
Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but part of the issue is whether if we want to, they become a commission decision rather than a staff
This is that,
decision.
right.
And there may be a statutory issue in that at the same time.
Right.
And so we've got to have time to discuss this. And, you know, I certainly agree with Len. This is not going to happen in a month.
Yeah, well, but and so the irrespective of how we do these, permanent or temporary, that we will do that.
Yes.
So, and if it helps staff on any of these to have it permanent,
Right.
technically, then I would say let's do that. That doesn't preclude any review at all.
And if I,
That was
if
all
I
I
may,
wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
and
right.
if I may, before we vote, just so you all understand that one of the things that's really necessary is for us under the statute to coalesce with the staff to be consistent with what the statute provides and be consistent with what we have to do so that we're all working in the same direction. And that's not such an easy thing. In some respects, it's kind of counter to our experience if we're lawyers or even in just our everyday life. So working together to collaborate, I think, is going to be a very important step in what the special committee does. And that's part of the purpose of doing it. And I think that's one of the reasons why, just to make sure we get it right, it's certainly going to be more than a month.
Well, we can carve out part 932 from the globals if that's the preference, which is the part that the special committee is focusing on. Although we would like at least to have on an emergency basis the authority to continue processing outside activity approval requests.
Sure.
I just-
That makes sense.
So I was
Commissioner
curious
Conrad,
about, is this out for public comments?
All
This
of these
partic-
rules
these
are on
are-
public
okay.
comment already, yes.
And so we'd repost it if we made changes like the next.
If you make a substantial change, you have to do a revised rulemaking and put out for an additional 45-day public comment period on the rule and also the revision.
And these were put out at the time that they were adopted, the emergency rules, or
What happened back in the fall is we had a series of meetings where we had the proposed rulemaking before the commission, and we asked for a motion to proceed with the notice of proposed rulemaking, and that part elicits public comment. And we also did a notice of emergency adoption for many of these because we were just conforming the statute. So yes, we've had public comment period, and they've been out. I have the dates on all of them. They've been out they were done periodically over the fall.
Oh, and we have those comments, and we're all aware of those comments.
We do. We have
As a-
one set of comments that ostensibly was a comment to 941.3A, but the comment on that was they had no objection.
Sure.
Oh,
Go.
you're talking about my question?
Oh, no, I just was responding to the judge.
Oh, okay. So, and I just wanted to mention that I did have some not substantive changes to those amendments, like, for example, which is kind of supposed to be they used to be alphabetical, and now they're like just changing that, and I do kind of have that written out. But we're not going to do G's. We do which one? What?
I think what we should do is do each one separately
Okay.
and just go down the list.
Okay.
Commissioner Whittingham and Commissioner Edwards.
Now, what I just wanted to clarify, because I believe what I heard Carl stated was that emergency or permanent are both effective. So I don't believe that we are really impeding. The only thing she said, I could be, please correct me, is that you'd have to come back here if we do the emergency, and the staff would prefer the permanent. But was one less effective than the other, or they're both effective?
There's two different, I think we're talking about possibly two different things. One is,
Okay.
are they both effective? Yes, they are as an emergency, and yes, they are as a permanent adoption. Whether, what the judge was getting at, whether, I don't know if you want to speak more to that again, but, whether that's viewed differently and possibly an Article 78 proceeding is another matter. I was just answering the question of that they are in effect. You know, emergency adoption is in effect the same way a permanent adoption is. That is the rule that has to be followed.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought I heard.
Sure. Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, I would just suggest that we wait. I didn't hear an argument why it's so compelling. And
Can we turn it up a little bit? Hold on, Commissioner Edwards, for a minute. Okay, go ahead.
While I agree that it will probably take more than a month, I mean, maybe we should have, I'm not sure if we can't do it in 2 months, but I haven't heard a compelling story why we should do this. And I just don't feel comfortable with approving it permanently when there's some issues around it.
And my only response to that was that that doesn't prevent us from addressing those issues in any way. But I think what I'm hearing also, though, is that with the exception perhaps of the delegation around subpoenas, et cetera, whether it's permanent or temporary has no real practical impact on the ability of staff to do its work.
And as I said, and this is probably a discussion to have in executive session then,
okay.
if we're going to get into it, but particularly with respect to the investigative and enforcement process. I'm certainly more comfortable having permanently adopted regulations. They're always subject to amendment, and we'll find, you know, this is a new statutory regime with respect to how investigations and enforcement actions proceed. And I think it's inevitable that there may be adjustments made down the road. But that's not a reason for them to continue to be temporary, when essentially what we're doing is taking statutory provisions and using those new provisions to replace outdated and no longer effective provisions in the regulations.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's go down the list one at a time. So on the issue of this delegation of issue subpoenas and et cetera, which has two pieces to it. One would be to make this particular regulation permanent, but to also add a temporary or emergency approval to cover a period where a gap in the law, in the reg.
Until it will permanently go into effect.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So it was moved by Vice Chair Austin, seconded by Commissioner Cardoza. Any more discussion on this one? So all those in favor of approving this regulation with the additional emergency procedure attached to it, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
One no.
I think that's
Two no's
abstain.
and one abstention. So let's do this again. Let's do the ayes. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can I just ask the basis for an abstention?
I'm just not.
Well, I don't
Finish
think,
the count.
yeah, I think we have to finish the count. Yeah, so all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's not enough.
That's not enough. All right. So all those in, let's have another motion. Is there a motion to do an emergency extension on number 5?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor of the emergency extension? All right, it's approved. All opposed? It's approved. On number 6, attachment G, this would, because of the change in definition or the additional information about victim, we would not do a permanent adoption of this one anyway. So what are we looking to have approved here?
We would like a motion to proceed with a notice of revised rulemaking and emergency adoption.
So is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Commissioner Whittingham, seconded by Commissioner Caravaggio. Is there a discussion on this one?
I just have one question on it. Now that we're getting into the weeds, on page 3, The commission shall, in the middle of that paragraph A, the commission shall provide written notice. Do we anywhere have a provision with how written notice is given? Is it served by a process server? Is it served by publication? Is it served by mail return receipt requested? And if we don't say it anywhere, shouldn't we?
In the past, there has not been a specific statutory provision, and there's been no regulatory provision on notice. It's been done consistently on an ad hoc basis. So that includes process server, email, mail. We've used every methodology depending upon the individual involved and their willingness or not to accept it, or whether or not they've had counsel who's been willing to accept.
There are places where I see that we pursue things in accordance with CPLR. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't have CPLR 308 or 311 with regard to individuals and corporations provided for in our rules, so that nobody's going to be able to jump up and down and yell due process.
And what is CPLR?
308 is the rules for personal service, either in hand, by a person of suitable age and discretion with mailing, nail and mail, and 311 is on corporations, which refers you back to section 3 something of the business corporation law, and section whatever it is in partnership law.
It also limits who can
suggest
serve process and so on.
that the appropriate committee take this up and come back to us with a recommendation?
I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to for Commissioner
I
Ava.
mean, as far as like cleaning it up, and is that something we are gonna do now when it's
No,
permanent?
No,
or
This is temporary.
temporarily?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is an emergency, again, adopting on an emergency basis with a 45-day notice about the additional language around victim. Correct? All right, so any more discussion? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
It's temporary, it's emergency adoption, 45-day public comment on the issue. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes. Now, under item H, amendments to the commission's regulations, et cetera, so that we have, I guess, amendments that are conforming to, we have regs that are conforming to the, right?
Yes, and that, it excludes 941 because those are separate. And 940 and 937 were not applicable. And these are almost entirely changing the cross references in the name of the commission. And I don't know if Commissioner Cardozo would prefer to carve out 932 or just.
I prefer it.
Then we would have to extend.
I don't want to extend this debate any longer than necessary.
So then what's the action we need here?
It's adoption of the proposed conforming amendments to NYCRR Chapter 20. Do we need an emergency as well?
It's a permanent adoption.
This would be well,
No, we're within the emergency. Did the emergency expire on these?
yeah, we could probably do it. If the emergency would
We need the
expire.
emergency because it expired on the 22nd.
So it's academic.
But these are conforming only.
These are conforming only.
Changing Jacob to
Conforming
Jacob.
to the
Yeah.
proper site in 94,
Right,
that
right.
changed, that's all it is.
Okay,
No, there's
All right.
nothing else.
So we could use a motion to permanently adopt, and another motion of, and to emergency adopt as well, just to cover that.
so we
Cover
put
to-
them
cover
both in the same motion.
I would move with both.
Okay,
Second.
all right, any more discussion on this one? So we're permanently adopting, but we have sort of emergency adoption in there as well to cover a gap.
Correct.
Correct? All right. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, the motion is passed, thank you. All right, so item attachment H, which is item number 7, no, did we do that? Attachment I, which is item number 8 on the agenda.
So this one is still ongoing, the public comment period is still ongoing. but to make sure it stays in effect until the next meeting, we just need a notice of the adoption of the emergency.
So this is an emergency adoption, readoption of an emergency that already exists. It's moved, Vice Chair Austin, second, Commissioner Whittingham. Any more discussion on this? It's a question from Commissioner James.
Yes, I think I've raised this before, and I'm not sure how we resolved it. But with respect to the online ethics training for lobbyists and clients, under B1, says for organizations that engage in lobbying activities, either lobbyist or client, the organization's chief administrative officer is responsible for completing the training on behalf of the organization. By that, do we mean that that person is responsible for ensuring that the training is done, or that that individual is to actually receive the training? Because if it's the latter, I think we need to modify it and say that that officer or their designee be responsible for completing the training.
Right, so I think we discussed this briefly before. The lobby application, which is kind of part and parcel with this, the CAO of lobbying organizations is responsible for the filings of the organization. Now, that's the way the whole system in our lobby application works. So this, and that does stem from the statute, which has the same similar language about CAOs being responsible. The training requirements kind of they correspond to that. And so what happens, and this is a bit in the weeds, but what happens with when you submit a lobbying report, there has to be someone at the organization that says on the CAO, they have to attest that they are the CAO with filing, and that if they designate someone to prepare the filing for them, that they're still responsible. And so before an organization can even submit a lobbying filing, a lobbying report, it has to have a CAO name. So I understand you're saying maybe an organization doesn't have that title in their repertoire, but when they're filing their lobbying reports, they will designate someone to be the CAO for the lobbying filing application. So we, with the lobbying, the training, we're just remaining consistent with how the application currently works, how people currently file. And so I guess what you're saying, so for the training purposes, that same person, the CAO that is responsible for the lobbying reports themselves, they also have to be responsible for taking the training for whatever organization it is, lobbying or filing organization.
They the person who's been designated as the CAO in their filing?
Perhaps. I would like to. We cannot adopt this today, and so I would like to think about that. My preference is to keep it the way it's written, because that is in conformance with the entire lobbying regulation and the way the lobby application works. So I prefer to keep it simple in that regard, without changing anything with training that might inadvertently change something with filing process. Because really what you're saying happens, so the person who is responsible for the filing, again, is someone who's willing to attest before they submit the file that they're responsible for them and that they're the CAO. I understand that maybe that title isn't at every organization, but for lobbying filing purposes, and also for training purposes, but for lobbying filing purposes, which is what I'm really concerned about, every organization has a CAO for that purpose. Every organization will say, designate someone that is listed on the filings as a CAO, is responsible for the filing of the organization. And that same person would be responsible for taking this. I prefer to leave it the way it is without, but if there is,
Well, as I recall, from the last time I filed them, there's no provision on the filing with colleague as to chief administrative officer of the organization. So if we don't have a name that to look at, will that, what happens if they don't take, if they don't file? Or if there's someone else signs it, because we don't know who the chief administrative officer is.
But we do, because in the system, or they can't even submit their filing unless they've designated
Is
someone.
that true today?
That's true today. The CAO has to do, and this is a bit in the weeds, but every organization has, and every individual has a profile, which is really their contact information, and so to speak. And so for a lobbying organization, any lobbyist, any client to submit their filings, they can't even do that. They can't submit or comply with the law until they have verified their information, so to speak. So verified their name, verified their email, verified their address, and they also list a CAO.
Okay, I you'll know better than I don't recall that the last time I signed one that it had that specific, I may have signed it, but I don't know that it said chief administrative officer. I signed it as chairman. Is that doesn't automatically translate to chief administrative officer, does it?
There has to be a CAO, like I said, for every filing. So I don't know if who in an organization did it. It could be a chairperson. But for filing purposes, whoever that person is that's taking responsibility is the CAO for filing.
It's not, if there's a large corporation, for example, that's filing as a client, it will designate an individual as a chief administrative. Yeah, the chairman of the board is not going to be typically the
CEO John Smith, and they'll say their real title, so CEO. They'll say they are the CAO, but they'll say John Smith and CEO, or COO. It's still in the system as that.
So the motion on the floor is to adopt this, an extension of the emergency adoption. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. All right.
Commissioner Austin, it is.
No, we don't. He's okay. He's fine. He said he knows it's going to pass. We have a quorum.
We still have a quorum.
Yeah, we have a quorum. Yeah. All right. Number 9. Proposed Commission Freedom of Information.
Yeah, I should say before we go on, and I meant to raise this earlier, but we were talking about the educational ethics training amendment on the lobbying side. Carol and Marlena conducted a tutorial for the press last week that was extremely successful. Major financial news organizations participated in that, and the feedback has been incredibly positive. And Carol can go into much more detail, but they explained what data is captured by the lobbying application, the electronic data, data that's accessible in various forms, and then they did demonstrations of how one searches through the public search capability of the system, and it was very well received. Carol can give you more detail, or Marlena.
Right. So yes, we did this last week. I think it's really helpful because the public search, the functionality of the search, the search functionality is really important for transparency. So we wanted to let the press know how to use it, how to best use it. And we've worked on this for the past couple of years, both with the lobbying application and the PSQ, and having standardization practices required that then feeds the search function. So it was great. We gave them a true step-by-step tutorial. We plan to put more information on the website as well in the coming weeks, and to try to keep that going. But I think it was well attended by the major media, and I think it was a good idea.
Excellent. Any comments?
Could I ask you to take a break?
Sure. Why don't we get through number 12, and then we'll take a break and come back and pick up the per diem. Can we do that?
I think she wants.
Oh, you want to go? You need to go. All right, let's take a break. All right.
I
Okay.
can take a break.
Yeah. Well, that's 2 of us out of the room. So why don't we just take a 10-minute break?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Cal, the mics are still on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you please mute the microphones? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
You just turned it on.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not seeing it on the screen yet. Is Marlena? Marlena, are we on?
I'm contacting media services. They had a break slate for us. All right, we're back.
All right.
All right.
All right. So-
Item 9 on the agenda, proposed commission freedom of information law regulations. Those are virtually in form to present to the commission as proposed regulations. These are required by freedom of information law. We have generally been following both the statute and the model regulations from the Committee on Open Government up to now. But we should have these in ample time in advance of the March meeting for proposed adoption, for putting them out for notice and comment. And I think we'll recommend emergency adoption so we can get moving with those. And I should say that Megan Matolo, Michael Sand, and Keith have been working on those.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Item 10.
Item 10, notice an invitation to testify at the annual public hearing. I've circulated drafts. The public hearing is currently scheduled for March 29th. New York Law School has very graciously agreed to host the meeting. Marlene has been working with their tech people to make sure the tech is in place. We will be accepting written submissions, and we'll have a commission dedicated mailbox for those, as well as for signups for those who wish to testify either in person or remotely. So it will be possible to testify by WebEx. We'll open the office here in Albany, both for viewing and for those who wish to participate and testify. And the notice that we're putting out, and we'll supplement that with specific invitations to individuals and groups who we think may have an interest in commenting on our regulatory structure, on statutory changes, and the efficacy, among other things, of the work that the commission has been doing to date. It covers the items that are required by the statute for the public hearing. It will also include commentary, if anyone wishes to submit on that, with respect to the review that the commission is required to conduct of the laws that we administer and that apply to us, the regulations that we administer, and the panoply of advisory opinions that provide sort of the backbone of what the commission does, both with respect to issues involving conflicts of interest, ethics, and of course lobbying. And we have some, I think it's approximately 500 advisory opinions over the years that have been issued that bear on the issues that we administer and regulate. And again, that's set for March 29th.
Great.
And should we all put that on our calendars to attend, either
Oh, yeah.
virtually or in person?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I think we should.
the plan would be for
us to be
commissioners
there
to,
in
yeah,
person.
to attend in person. If you
Person,
can, you will be able to attend remotely as well if you wish.
Commissioner Carvalho and then Commissioner Grimes.
so I had mentioned to Executive Director Berland and Chair Davy that I have a conflict that day. I was asked to raise it at the meeting to see if there was any possibility of changing the date. I had proposed maybe that Monday, March 27th. And I don't know about the school, but I'm just mentioning it at the meeting and putting it out there and see if anyone is available on an alternate date.
I think the biggest consideration is going to be the the room,
Right, the NY.
correct? And whether or not we
You know,
can,
we'll have to
and then
check and
whether
then,
other commissioners have conflicts.
But you can watch it virtually
Yeah,
afterwards,
or
can't
attend
you?
virtually, yeah. I think
I can't attend virtually
you
because
can.
I will not.
No,
be
but you could,
live.
isn't it taped?
I can see it. I
Yeah,
just
you can
it will
would
be
like to be
recorded
there. If
and
I
it will
can't
be,
be
it
there,
will
that's
be
fine.
live streamed.
I
Yeah.
think.
And,
Yeah.
and we have to make arrangements with media services for the streaming. It will be streamed as well as WebEx attendance for those who wish to testify remotely.
So I'm sorry, which meeting is that?
March 29th
Public
is the
hearing.
public
29th?
hearing, yeah.
It's
And
a
we wanna
heavy
move it to-
meeting
Well, I think
month.
we should probably, given all the schedules that involve, plus the site, if we could, keep it where as it is, we'll have a recording.
That's fine
Yeah.
with me. That's
Okay.
fine.
Commissioner Grunwald.
The format, how do you envision this happening? Do you envision the chair opening it and the members just listening? Is it a Q&A or is it just take information in?
As I envision it, there would be an opening statement or opening remarks about the purpose of the hearing, which is to elicit information in the first instance about the commission's performance to date. But, additionally with respect to our administration of the laws and any changes that are appropriate in those laws. It's an opportunity for the public to comment.
Right. So as such,
I know
we listen.
Yeah.
And in terms of the structure of the meeting itself, of the hearing itself, whether we simply take the testimony as it's offered in sequence, or if we try to have topical divisions, my thinking is that we would wait and see what signups we get and what proposed topics individuals propose to talk about, and maybe if it makes sense, group them by topic. But if not, if there's a range of issues that folks want to comment on or talk about, that take the testimony in sequence. I imagine we'll get a robust amount of written submissions as well.
And are we limiting?
I would think, though, to your question, the event will be interactive. And if there are commissioners who want to ask follow-up questions
Yeah.
to what is being orally presented to the commission, that would be appropriate.
And are we
Not mistaken.
both asking people to sign up
Yes,
beforehand?
register in
Yeah.
Register, and are we putting limits on
the time.
the time?
We will see how much interest we elicit, and if there
But-
are a substantial number of individuals who sign up, then
I
we'll,
would
then we'll
strongly
impose the
recommend, having sat through, as many of you have, lots of these meetings, give people a time limit right up front. And I think 3 to 5 minutes should be
Yeah, that would-
sufficient.
That would be the norm.
If I may, just out of
No.
curiosity,
Right.
traditionally, how long do these meetings run?
This is the first we've ever done.
So we've got a long-standing tradition. Thank
We,
you.
we're planning on 4 hours. We think that's adequate. Again, depending on the
So it's
interest.
6 to 10 or 5 to 9? Oh, it's in the afternoon.
It's
No,
10 to 2. We were
10 to
thinking
2,
10 to 2
That's why it's in the
as
morning.
a
That's good.
convenient time.
Okay.
But we thought we would see what interest there is in actually testifying in person, and allow that to determine.
Yeah, but I still am going to
Sure.
sort of make a nuisance of myself and just really insist that we give the public a advance notice that we're setting limits on these
In the
things
notice
in
itself.
the notice itself. I have seen, we live in a performative environment, and as much as we want people to have an opportunity to contribute, some will contribute more than others. All right, anything else on this? Item number 11, I can just say there, we will take this up on March 14th all day. We will meet in, those of us who can meet in New York in person will, and we will make allowance for people to come in remotely from various parts of the state as well.
If I may, I would also probably suggest, and we'll speak about that, that the special committee also have a public meeting on that day.
Sure. And we will begin the meeting with a discussion of sort of people's perspectives on committees more generally. So we'll set aside the first hour or so for that discussion, because I know there's a desire on the part of some commissioners to just have that high level discussion about committees in this commission.
And that's at 10.
I think we're going to ask that we start at 9:30 so that we can get in all that we need to get.
And it goes till 5:30,
Yes.
9:30 to 5:30. So I don't, the special meeting would be after that and not before.
We'll have to figure that out. Or we'll do it a different day.
Yeah. Oh, you could do it at 8:30. All right. Getting that overly enthusiastic here. So effectuating Executive Law 94, subsection 4, subsection F.
And that's the per diem.
Okay, that's
provision.
us. So I see. That's us. All right. So, Commissioner Carballo,
Is that motion to defer this to the next meeting?
motion to table to next meeting. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Commissioner Whittingham. I don't think motions to table are open to discussion. So we either voted up or down.
Right.
All those in favor of tabling to the next meeting, please say aye.
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 Aye. That's only 3 of us. All those opposed, no?
No.
No.
Well, we need 6 to pass, so that's an automatic. All right. So here we are. We will discuss. We have then a resolution that has been amended by Commissioner Groenewegen. We all have it before us. In order to start the discussion, I'm just going to ask for a motion to approve the resolution that we received this morning in our email, or that was here when we got here, which is a slight variation of what we had in our packet. So is there a motion to that effect? Is there, Commissioner Cardoza, is there a second?
Second.
Just for discussion, seconded by Commissioner Austin. All right. Do you want to talk, Commissioner Groenewegen, about the proposed changes that you have suggested?
I'm happy to, although I think it makes more sense to understand what was proposed, to understand what was
Sure.
changed. The original proposal provided for the payment of an hourly per diem as authorized by the statute for a variety of activities. Originally, it included preparing for and attending or otherwise participating at regularly or specially called meetings of the commission. B was preparing for or attending or otherwise participating in meetings of standing and specially constituted committees of the commission, and any subcommittees of standing or specially constituted committees to which a member has been appointed. C was preparing for or attending or otherwise participating in public hearings as required by law. D was participating in the consideration, preparation, or review of substantial basis reports and notices of civil assessment and other penalties made or issued pursuant to the relevant provisions of the law. And then E was performing such other exceptional or extraordinary duties as the commission chairperson or the commission by majority vote may direct such member to perform, provided Such duties and the entitlement to an hourly per diem allowance therefore are enumerated in writing. And someplace in here, there's also a provision, I'm not sure where it is right this minute, for the payment for unique duties performed by the chair. I don't know where that is right this minute. But, so my concern with this, first and foremost, related to the discussion that we just heard, the discussion about committees. And I'll just repeat my concerns. I have never fully understood the role of committees.
Well, let's have that discussion on the 14th.
Okay, but because that's so fundamental, I do not understand how we are expecting to be compensated for a function I don't understand. I also think that the way this is drafted currently with what is existing subparagraph E could address a lot of the concerns I have about the work that's envisioned for committees. So I don't think, to the extent there are specific tasks where individual commissioners can add value to the work of the body as a whole and be of substantive, meaningful assistance to staff, I think that can still be accomplished. But on a far more specific, well, I said, I think it can be directed, so we know who's being asked to do what, we know the purpose of what they're being asked to do, and we can have a sense of the duration so that there's greater accountability to the public with respect to what is, in my mind, is still confusion around committees. But the other concern, so the revisions I made to this document were to eliminate reference to the committees with my belief that the requisite work that's intended to be done by some subset of the members can still occur under this resolution. The concept of open-ended preparation, I understand, having been a member of this body since its inception, that there is a lot of time spent to be ready to be a meaningful member of this committee. But my concern about preparation is that it is unverifiable. You know, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's as a matter of public accountability. There's no means to know that it happened. And I think as a body like ours, where our whole system is to make sure that there is accountability and there's a way to verify what people are doing, to not have that, I think, is problematic. But recognizing that it is a time commitment, in my mind, I thought perhaps the concept of preparation could be accommodated by at least capping. And I threw in an arbitrary number. I put in 2 hours, but I think that's arbitrary. But I think the need for a cap is pretty fundamental. We, you know, I was never in private practice, but those who were in private practice know, you know, that if you're billing for your time, you're always accountable to somebody, your client. And if you overbill, your client has the ability to question you. If we didn't have a cap and the public thought we were, and I don't mean to use the word bill, but that's the closest analogy, there's nobody to push back on that. The public just has to say it's whatever is appropriate. And I don't think that's where we want to be vis-a-vis the public, with no cap whatsoever. So that's why I recommended the provision for a cap. And then the last thing I was concerned about was a proposal that the effective date of this resolution be retroactive to the date the commission was created in July of last year. And that concern, but it's only with respect to parts of it. If it's a public meeting, anything where there is a public verifiable independent record, that's easy. And that should be a given. But to the extent we were talking about compensation for prep time months ago, then all I can do is speak for myself, but I haven't been keeping a timesheet. That's not how I viewed my commitment here. I did what I thought I needed to do to be informed, and I don't see a way to go back and expect people to reconstruct that.
Except on that one, I would say that there are members of this commission I know who've been keeping very detailed. I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but I just want to acknowledge that there are members of the commission who've been keeping very detailed records of their time, the time that they've spent doing commission work. But let's hear from other commissioners. Commissioner Cardozo.
Well, I agree with the proposed amendment that Nancy just went through. I just want to add some views. First of all, as a responsible public body, I don't see how we can adopt any resolution without being able to estimate a cost, because this will carry with it potentially a significant cost on the commission. And I can't imagine how today we could estimate that cost. We don't have any of the data. And I think under the revised proposal, we can certainly make that calculation because we have records of the various public and commission meetings. That's number one. Number two, in deciding what our policy should be, we have to remember, thinking of the public, of what Jacob did. And despite the fact that the law that Jacob was operating under was, in terms of the wording that says preparing for meetings and doing your work, was really no different than the law today. And notwithstanding that, the Jacob commissioners voted not to give per diem reimbursement for anything other than the public meeting and the commission meetings. I think that's, the contrast. If we adopt something broader than that, will be striking and will bring very unfavorable comment. See just what Nancy said in terms of prep time. Some people, I'm sure, may have kept detailed timesheets, but we are in part public servants, and to not have any kind of cap on the kind of prep time, I think would be very, very inappropriate. And going back to that last point, the effective date, I think, is critical. So I strongly urge that we adopt this proposal that Nancy has put before us. And I think to do otherwise would bring a real disservice to us as commissioners.
I'm in agreement, I think, overall with the changes. The one point I do want to make, though, is that in fairness to those of us who believe that the legislation that we are currently operating under offers a substantially different approach from the legislation that Jacob operated under, we should take note that the legislation does lay out an hourly rate. It's specific about that for essentially all activity related to our carrying out our functions as commissioners. Now, I'm in favor of capping some of that, limiting how that is done. I think this resolution as amended gets close to that. I would say that I will support this, but supporting it with the understanding that that under point 1 of the now therefore point 1E, that would allow, that would still allow, should we decide to have committee work, some committee work, if not all, to be compensated. Doesn't necessarily preclude it. So we don't have to talk specifically about committees in this reso, but we're not eliminating the possibility of compensation for committee work as it currently stands. So let's go, Commissioner Austin, Commissioner Whittingham, and then we'll just go around the room.
If I may, Nancy, if I were to call you with regard to a committee we're working together on and just discuss something for 15 minutes, would that be billable?
No.
Why not? Aren't we doing commission work?
Yes, yes, but I guess I would echo Commissioner Cardozo's point of view. I see our role. I do not see us as employees of COLI, where we are collecting for everything we do. I see us as very privileged public servants afforded a really important role right now. And we have the privilege of being here at the ground level, and I think there's just stuff we bring our own experience and our own efforts to making it a success. And the amount of time I've spent thinking about issues with this commission, it's extraordinary. Now, mind you, I have a lot of time. I'm retired, but I never expected I would be billed for that. And I think the idea of billing for just thinking is
Not what I said.
No,
though.
that's not. Yeah.
What I said was is taking time
yeah.
to converse with fellow commissioners on time that would be otherwise spent on other things. Is that something for which the legislature, in your opinion, thought we should be compensated?
No disrespect to the legislature, but I haven't a clue. I don't know. I think they've used language that is very common in compensation statutes for, the performance of actual duties, but I don't.
Very different than Jacob, if I may interrupt.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody that compensates members for prep time. I just don't. So, but
it's not prep.
what I would say, here's a concern I have, is that it all goes back to committees, but I think a lot of the work we individually as commission members are doing, it's very ad hoc. I think there needs, if in my worldview, if there was something to be discussed and it was thought appropriate for one of the members of the commission to take a lead on it, like I was asked months ago to take the lead on the per diem stuff. It seems to me my charge is to give back to the group something concrete written to focus our discussion on, not just a concept. And I think we've got committees that, some are 4 and 5 members out of what we're currently a 10-member body. That doesn't make good sense to me. It seems to me.
So let's not do the committee discussion now.
But
We'll get to that.
The problem, but it
Whole
goes
day.
back to Commissioner Austin's question about what you get paid for. It seems to me if there is something discrete that relates to our duties as members of the commission that we have been asked to do, and we all understand the need to do it, what the anticipated outcome of the request to the member is, and the member then works with whatever staff can best inform us as a commission member, then maybe you do compensate for that. But I think it has to be defined, and you have to know what you're producing. And And without that, I don't know how the public understands what we're doing.
Right, you could argue, and then I'm gonna move on. You could, to other commissioners, you could argue that the public knows because if it's in committees, the committees will produce minutes and those minutes are available to the public. The committees are open to the public except for executive session. Having said that, let's hear from Commissioner Whittingham and then give other commissioners a chance to speak to it.
Okay. I am against this proposal. The legislator has said you're supposed to get paid for work related to this. Let's get paid for it or go back to them and say, we don't want paid, change the legislation, right? That's what I was personally told prior to getting here, prior to being appointed. We were told and we read, it was public record, what we would be compensated. It is fair and equitable to compensate individuals for the work that they do. A fair day's pay for a fair day's work. That's what we've heard since I was a kid. Allow for diversity on the commission. I am tired, the public, I would dare to say, is tired of the good old boys club of committees that are less diverse, socioeconomic backgrounds. We don't only need the privileged few who can afford to not get paid. We don't only need the retirees, we need a diverse commission. It takes substantial time, okay? We're from different backgrounds. It might be, I can publicly say I don't know anybody else. I'm a single income household. Anytime I take away from my practice, anytime I take away from other work to do this commission work, it's money that I'm not making, okay? Paying a public servant a fair wage across the board, regardless whether or not it's this commission, also is a good way to avoid corruption, which is always a thing in the public, right? That's one. I personally would like to dedicate time to this commission. I do not wish to be a figurehead. I do not wish to have a title just to be a commission and be privileged to be here. I want to do the work. I intend to dedicate time to do the work, and I would like to be compensated for the time. The work is not done at a meeting. At a meeting like we've seen today, when we have a number of things to discuss, we've got a table, we've got to come back. Okay, the work is done outside of the public view. If you want a camera, I'll go on Zoom. You can see me prepare. We've got to prepare, because if we don't prepare, we cannot be effective. And that is what it is. And we shouldn't be like, okay, you should, for example, I'm in Albany today, like other commissioners. We left what we're doing yesterday, we travel up. I'm not asking for travel time. I'm good. We're gonna be here all day. We'll probably get home at 8 o'clock. That's 2 days that you're not doing personal work. I do not need travel time. But the time that I'm preparing, the time that I'm here, let us get paid for doing it. The public expects us to change. They expect us to do more. Let us do more and not be, okay, I'm gonna be here, this is it. I unfortunately, far from retired, not privileged, not independently wealthy, single income household, and would vote to get paid, as the legislator has said. Go back to them and say we don't need the money, but until that has changed, I will not vote for a proposal like this.
Commissioner Whittingham, just a couple questions. With this, so on the prep time, it allows for this resolution allows for submission of prep time, but it just caps it at 2 hours. Do you think that's insufficient?
Here is the book.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's not.
Right.
I cannot read everything in this book in 2 hours. I am perhaps a slower reader than others.
So
and it's only some prep time. I understand we're going to go back to what the committee is. I am in total agreement. It should be defined as to what our role is and when we do it. Define it and let's get paid for it.
Are you opposed to a cap in general?
I am. More so than not, I am opposed to it. I think the cap should be, you're not gonna spend a whole day preparing, right? The day's 7.5 hours. You know, you might do it over 2 days, and yes, you're going over, but I mean, the cap was arbitrary. Any cap we're gonna do is arbitrary. And let's not go into the arbitrary land for that.
But
If we are going to do this, and you can do a FOIA and request my timesheet any day, and I will, if you want, I will tell you, I read, you know, exhibit A to E in this time
yeah,
period.
but what I'm
and
trying to
doing
get
that.
at are just sort of concepts here and principles, because we've got to Commissioner Cardozo's point, we've got to be able to quantify this, put a dollar amount on it
Yes.
for the legislature. We can get closer to doing that if we know, for example, the cap is going to be 4 hours for prep. So we just assume everybody's going to, not everybody will, but we, for the sake of budget, we assume everybody will submit the 4 hours for prep. We assume that we know what the committees, we know what the commission meetings will be. I'm still going to hold out that if we adopt this as it is, maybe change the cap on the prep time, we'll still be able to, for those who want, submit time for committee meetings. Because I'm board committee. So I'm not, this doesn't preclude that, should we get there. So if we were to change the cap on prep time, just so that we can, and have a cap though, so that we can get a budget, submit a, you know, so that we know what this is going to cost us, just put it in sort of simple terms. Could you support that?
Maybe a cap at 4, maybe. And there are other things I don't like here. So it's not just that.
Tell me what
So
else.
that is not just the only
Okay.
point. To Commissioner Austin's point, yesterday, you talk to staff, you're spending 2 hours, you're spending an hour, you're doing that. So I guess no pay for speaking to staff and doing that. So if you want something, if you want to review, only top level review. So the rest of the work that's being done by the commission. I'm sorry?
I don't think this precludes that.
Okay, can it be explicitly stated? I don't see it. I may have read it wrong,
Right.
but can you tell me where that is?
I think that if.
And do I come back each time to the commission to say, give me a majority vote to include this, if it's excluded?
So in that particular case,
Yes,
you're on a special committee. Special committee has an assignment, and to carry out that assignment, you have to speak to staff. Is that precluded by this resolution? I don't think so.
I did not see it there. I would like things, yeah.
It is.
You think it is?
I can't answer that
Right.
because
With all due
I know we're not talking committees,
Right.
but
Let's hear from
With
Commissioner.
all due respect, and Commissioner Groenewegen did an exceptional job in putting this together, and I fully understand her feelings and thoughts. However, the statute doesn't say for time actually spent on this, and this. All it says is actually spent in the performance of the member's duties under this section. And so I suggest that, well, I disagree as to whether or not coming to a meeting is a whole day, because of the time and all that involved. Forget that. We'll just stick to the hourly. I think that any time that we do something, we read something related to what our work is, we pick up the phone and call, we send an email, that is actually spent in the performance of our duties. And I understand we don't want to be wasteful, and I understand we don't want to be accused of padding. Although I having met all of my colleagues here, I don't expect that that's anything I would worry about. And certainly I would think when the timesheets are submitted to the executive director, there'll be a phone call if there's something that is out of line. But the bottom line is the legislature gave us actually spent in performance of the duties without limitation.
So let me ask this, let me just sort of take a sense of the group. Could you support the original resolution that we distributed with the board book and that was in our public, notice, public materials?
I
on
have
the
to go
meeting?
back and remember it. Give me a second.
And what tab is that?
Would you, Commissioner Whittingham, would you support the resolution that was in the board book?
I had some questions on it. As to D, when it talks about the substantial basis and the reports and all the different section, I specifically have a note there that says what's excluded. The other question I had was, what about meeting with staff? What about routine reviews? As I have expressed openly and in private, I just said again that I would like to be involved, more involved, perhaps not micromanage, not do staff work, but be an involved commission, which I believe is what the public is asking us to do. And I have had different conversations to just say whether it's a briefing, whether it's, just reviewing small things, I want to be there. So I had a note here that, because I don't think that might come into under the language substantial. So that was another question that I had there. I wasn't quite sure, and I'm sure this is probably public record and easy to look up. So I said, okay, the Office of the Controller, maybe we want to put that in so I know exactly what we all do, the guidance there. And the other question I had involved the Commission's website and put it out there. We have a mechanism for this, which is called FOIA. Why are we doing that? Is it to shame those of us, which is why I'm speaking openly? Is it to shame those of us who are saying we want to get paid? That's how I read this. When I read it, to put it on the website, FOIA it, get it, request it, make it available. Not necessary unless you're trying to shame the commissioners who are saying they want to be paid.
And I don't think that's the purpose.
That's why
of
it's a
that.
question.
Yeah, right. I think it goes to transparency, and that if we're going to do this, then we don't have any hesitation about sharing with the public the decisions that we've made and what we're submitting. So I think that was the intent. I don't think it was intended to shame anyone.
Okay.
Anyone else? Commissioner Carvalho?
So I had asked to table this discussion for the next
Right.
meeting for a number of different reasons. Number one is we'd have a better understanding of the committees, Commissioner Grove, and then we could address that issue. Oh, my bad. And we could address that issue. Secondly, there's a number of commissioners who are not able to be here that I know were very focused on this issue and very verbal about it and vocal about it. And I thought they should have an opportunity to be here and discuss this. Even our newest commissioner is not here for this discussion. I thought it might be a good idea to table for those reasons. And in addition, that we just got this brand new draft that is significantly different than everything we had discussed, and almost came to a consensus about at the first time that we discussed this at the last public meeting. I think the statute is clear. It says commissioners shall be paid this amount. It doesn't say may. If that was what the legislature intended, it would have said may. Many of us are lawyers here. When we do statutory construction, and usually if there is a shall, it's a shall. I think that we are all, we were all chosen. We went through a very arduous process to be sitting here today. I don't think that process, I don't think anyone believes that we are here to steal from the state or to claim time that we have not worked for. I think all of us should be given the benefit of the doubt and be trusted to do the right thing. So I don't think we need to be, I think I understand why you're concerned about that people can't quantify our work, but I don't have any objection to the public being able to obtain my time and look at it, because it's going to be clear and it's going to be very detailed. And getting back to Commissioner Whittingham's point, when I accepted this position, I looked at the statute. The person who invited me to my appointing authority specifically mentioned it. I don't think it's a mistake that the legislature put this in and put us on parity with Supreme Court justices as far as pay. Some of this I've said before, I'm just repeating it because I think it's important. This is not a common statute at all. This is the first time that this has ever happened. There is a significant difference between what J. Cope was entitled to be paid on simply a per diem basis, not even hourly, and what the legislature has set out for us to be paid. I think it's all well and good. Whoever does not want to accept pay, they have the option not to accept pay. But you should not preclude the rest of us from receiving the pay that we accepted this on the terms of doing that and expect it to be paid. And it's much less than any of us really make and bill for our time. So it's not like this is a windfall for me at all. I just want to note also that in your great letter, the budget letter, you did put in that we would be receiving, that was part of of what you put into the budget request, is that we were to receive this amount of compensation on an hourly basis. And this is all what we're asking for and what we had discussed before conforms to what we're putting out there publicly, to what the legislature said, what you're saying in the budget request. I don't think I don't distrust any of you. I expect all of us to work really hard. And I think the purpose of putting this pay in is that we are building a brand new organization. The legislature didn't want us to take J. Cope's what do you call it, their compensation structure. They didn't ask us to do, and they don't want us to not work or to defer to the staff completely. They want us to redo this whole commission and all the rules that go with it. And this is only a temporary thing. We're not going to be working like this for 2 years. I expect that in 1 year we'll have done all the significant work to be able to have rules that are explicit and convey to the staff, and to everyone what exactly we mean by that rule. And so our participation is going to be less and less. And yeah, and I want to make that commitment, and I want to do this work, and I do want to receive the compensation that the legislature set out for me to receive without any caps, because I can be trusted.
Commissioners James and Edwards, would you like to comment?
Yes, I'll comment. I think when the legislature established the commission, there was an intent to have a different model than existed at JCO. And I believe that that's why they actually specified that there would be an hourly rate as opposed to the per diem. And I think they anticipated that we would be working extensively, and that they wanted the members of the commission to be compensated. I'm comfortable with was it section 1E, because even though we don't discuss the committee, it authorizes the commission chair or the commission by a majority vote to designate duties that would be entitled the person to compensation on at the per diem rate. And I think that will cover the committee meetings or any other assignments that we may have, which there have been a number of them over the last several months. Obviously, I don't anticipate that we would receive compensation for those duties, because I think we're thinking about prospectively paying for non-commission meetings. But I also believe that preparation is required. I'm comfortable with a cap. I don't know if 2 hours is the proper cap, but I think I'm comfortable with a cap because I think we need to be able to figure out what the budget ask is going to be, so we don't want an unlimited amount. available. So I'm comfortable with a cap. And whether it needs to be 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, I'm not really certain. But as I said, I'm comfortable with a cap. And I do think that we should be compensated for prep time because this is a serious role that we've taken on. And in order to do it effectively, you can't just come to a meeting or just glance over the materials. You need to be fully familiar with them and prepped on the issues that are going to be raised at the meetings or at the committee meetings.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I have a comment too. Thank you. I think I've grown a bit on this issue, and I am pretty much in support of what was said by Commissioner Whittingham and Commissioner James. In that we should be compensated. Now, I just wanted to make a couple of points. One, the reason why I am objecting to Commissioners Rosenwagen, her proposal, because your proposal is really based, from my perspective, on the belief that you are not sure what the committee is, what the purpose of the committee is.
For the committees.
That, to me, colors the recommendations that you're making. And we've talked about this. Our purpose is to serve as a governing body over the commission's work. We are responsible for what that commission does. And it takes time to prepare and to do that appropriately. I am comfortable with the various categories that's outlined with regard to where we get paid. I think you mentioned standing meetings, special meetings, public meetings, monthly meetings, and committee meetings. That works for me. And just as your point, I support the original proposal more so than I support this amendment that's being put forth right now. I just have some issues or a few changes I would like to include. But generally speaking, I think the issue is compensation. I agree with Commissioner Whittingham around compensation without caps. That makes sense to me. But I do have some concerns about how that might impact the budget. And so what I would be open to vote to support is a couple of things. One is that there be allowances for compensation for prep time. There should be a generous cap, I would say up to X hours, up to 4 hours. Anything over that, if a commissioner anticipates spending more time, then it needs to be a conversation with the chair to make sure that he or she is comfortable with that. In regard to and I'm only saying that for budgetary reasons, we can look at it, we can come back to it after another year and look at what it comes to. And if it's excessive, then we can make our adjustments. But to make an assumption that we shouldn't get paid fully for what we do without a cap, because of budgetary reasons, I think it has not been tried. I think the compensation should be retroactive. And I think we should be able to document our time. And I fully agree. We're going to be viewed by the public. The public has a right to see how time was spent. We spent a lot of time at the beginning doing this work. I mean, I can just tell you the hours I spent just working on this organizing committee meeting. And this time well spent. There's still time taken away from my consulting business and my teaching responsibilities. So I don't support the second proposed resolution with some changes. I support some discussion around cap, but that the cap be flexible for those commissioners who find time over and above what their, what the max is. And I just think, the whole thing around trust. If we believe that we can't trust one another, then I don't need to be on this committee.
Okay, Commissioner Groenwegen, and then I have a suggestion.
I have just a couple of things to say. One, I hope no one reads anything that I've drafted to suggest a lack of trust. That is not here. My concern is accountability to the public and how we establish. And so I just want that to be clearly stated. But I also want to say this. Going into this discussion, the chair knew of my concerns about committees. I was under the understanding that until the meeting this morning, that this discussion was going to be preceded by a discussion of committees.
I never gave you that impression. We clearly have a date set,
No,
March 14th,
I'm just
for
looking
a
at,
committee discussion on committees.
I misspoke. I understood that we were going to have on this calendar, under item, whatever it was prior to this, a discussion of committees. That's what I thought. And so be it. If I misunderstood or I misread that, so be it. But I do think I'm put at a real disadvantage in explaining my concern about this because it all ties together in that we go back to the language of the statute that talks about being compensated for time spent in the performance of the member's duties. That requires a definition of what the member's duties are. And one of the things that I've always stated about the committees is my concern that the members start to take on the role of the staff, or they supplement the role of the staff. And I think that that basic conversation about understanding our role as members vis-a-vis the role of the executive director and the role of the staff. We've never had that conversation. It's another one I've suggested to both the chair and the executive director we have, because it all comes back to that, understanding what we as members are expected to do. I agree with Commissioner Whittingham. I don't see my role as just being a titular role of a commissioner, but nor do I see my role as running this organization on a day-to-day basis. I see it very much the responsibility that we look to the staff who are experts in ways we are not, that we in the first instance rely on them. But if I could just finish, Commissioner Edwards, it doesn't mean we stop there. Our role is an oversight role. It's to ask the right questions. It's to ask hard questions. But I think we ask those questions in public. We ask the questions. And if we don't get good answers or complete answers, then we ask them again, or we do whatever we need to do to satisfy ourselves that our vision as the commission members, the policymakers, that we know that's being executed. And there may be times where the chair appropriately says to a group of us or one of us, look into this. Look into this. I'm making this part of your duty. Perhaps someday we'll have committees that have charges that we've all agreed to. We know what they're doing and why they exist and what their work product is, but we don't have that now. And I think this role confusion goes to the heart of what the members do, and we can't decide what we get compensated for in fulfillment of the members' duties until we've discerned that.
Well, I'm not so sure that, I'm not going to claim that I have confusion about my duties as a member of this committee vis-a-vis staff. I'm very clear on
Well,
that.
what is it?
It's what I do. I leave management of the day-to-day responsibilities to the staff. And as Commissioner Edwards says, I see my role as providing oversight and guidance and counsel when staff request it, as happens often, which I appreciate. Now, I think it's up to me to decide what of that I want to submit for payment and what of that I do not. But I'm not confused.
And you think that's as a member, not as chair?
I think that as both chair and a member, I don't distinguish between that. Someone reached out to me the other day and said, "Can I be in touch with Sandy about a matter?" I said, "You should always feel like you could reach out." I wouldn't ask people to reach out to commissioners to reach out to other staff without talking to Sandy about it first, because I don't think we should do that unless we are already operating with that staff under certain situations which currently exist. But any commissioner should be able to talk to Sandy about anything at any time and decide whether or not in 15-minute increments, in my opinion, they're going to submit that for compensation. That has been my experience on a public body. And you had vast differences between what people received and what they didn't based on what they submitted. Where I'm coming to is to believe we're never going to get to where everybody wants to be. So we're going to have a very hard time getting to the votes. I'm almost to the point of suggesting that the following, that commissioners shall submit time for activities performed in the fulfillment of their duties on this commission, that they shall be compensated for that on an hourly basis as outlined in the statute, that staff will provide timesheets and a process for processing that time, and that commissioners' timesheets submitted will be audited annually by controllers, and that commissioners' time should be, the time that commissioners are compensated for should be reported to the public on an annual basis. And those are the parameters.
With no cap?
With no cap. End of story. And then let's assess in a year and see where we are. Because right now, every time, you got too many lawyers in the room. I mean, every time we get something on the table, everybody has a way. We're going to be running around in a circle, spending the public's time on this when we really should be spending the public's time on doing the business of the public. So I think that I looked at this again. It does say shall be compensated for activities and the performance of their duties as commissioners. I think we should do that, and the control should be an audit and public reporting.
What if we, rethinking the tabling motion, what if we, over the next month, submitted our timesheets or whatever we're going to call them, and so then we'll know at least for a month. And admittedly, that's not appropriate time, but then resume this discussion, and everyone will submit their time, and we all look at what everyone else has done and see, whether we have a consensus.
I think a truer picture would be to allow retroactive submission from the inception of the commission. I think there are people on the commission, and it's just a test, Michael, because we haven't come up with a policy yet. So, because I think there are people on the commission who kept very good records of their time. It's going to give us a truer picture of what it looks like, and then it'll help us determine what kind of caps, what other.
But it wouldn't be effective. You're not paying the people yet. You're just saying, let's see the records.
I'd be in favor of paying them if they submitted it, and then we'll develop a policy once we have a fuller picture.
My only concern is, again, with this, Commissioner Davey, we're spending too much time on this issue.
I agree.
This is the time we face this, and we should not be viewed as spending so much time on something that we benefit from. We need to get to the business of the people. And I'm not willing to wait another month some hope for this. Either we do or we don't.
All right, so we have, let's do this procedurally. We have a motion on the table. The motion is this revised policy resolution that we received this morning. I'm going to call the question. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll vote for it. 1, 2, 3. All those opposed, no.
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 The motion fails.
I just want to.
You want to
because
vote?
I missed
Sure,
the
absolutely.
Claudia's votes.
Right. And I think I heard a no from our virtual attendees.
Yes.
All right. So then I'm going to put my motion on the table. So I move that commissioners be compensated at an hourly rate as outlined in the statute, defined in the statute, for all activities related to their responsibilities on this commission. That time should be submitted in timesheets prepared by the staff and processed by the staff. That those timesheets should be audited on an annual basis by the State Comptroller's Office, and the results of those audits shared with the public. And that commissioner compensation should be reported monthly at our public meetings. That's my motion. Second, discussion.
You'd say prepared by the staff. Originally, the commission would have to prepare the timesheet.
Well, no, the staff prepares the form, the
Right, but
process.
we would prepare.
But we would submit the time, right, on those
And
time
who
sheets.
signs that?
I'm sorry?
Who would sign off on that?
We could say that the timesheets would be approved by the executive director and the chair. And in the case of the chairs, it would be the executive director and the vice chair.
And what are you proposing be stated publicly each month? I just want to clarify. I'm sorry.
What we've submitted, what we've been compensated.
Okay.
The amount.
Just one question, if I
Sure.
may. It would be made public at every commission meeting
Yes.
as a posting on our website, or in what way?
We could do it both. Just have it as a part of the chair's financial report. I mean, the executive director's financial report, and because of that, it would automatically be on the website because all this material is on the website anyway.
But
So that would just be Commissioner 1 got $10, Commissioner 2 got 30.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Commissioner Edwards?
Shouldn't it be a lump on the website, just like anything else? You have X dollars in expense. Don't put down every supply order. It's a general statement of how you spent overall. If someone wants details on a particular commissioner, then they should ask for it.
So you are advocating for a collective report as
Yes.
opposed to individual commissioner compensation?
Yes. I don't want to say.
Unless there's a
Oh,
request from the public.
Yes.
Okay.
Under the personal
Commissioner
services. I'm sorry.
Ayers.
I just wanted to, I'm still thinking I want to abstain because of this part of the discussion, but I just want to say I feel pretty strongly that we shouldn't make people go through the work of a FOIA request. It's public information. People have a right to it. It's going to be posted online eventually anyway. I don't see any advantage in making members of the public wait a year to find out. I do. For me, this illustrates, I have some discomfort with this whole discussion because I think that, our decisions on our own pay, I would feel more comfortable with if we were looking at an independent analysis. I know the statute may seem clear on its face, but as a professor of statutory interpretation, I know that nothing is actually clear on its face. And I think these questions are difficult for me to opine on. I'm not saying we should have gone to outside counsel necessarily, although I certainly would appreciate a comparison of what other agencies do with similar language, how other folks handle this. But at the very least, do feel pretty strongly that we should be accountable for for what we claim, and we shouldn't make people wait for things that they're entitled to.
My only
I disagree in putting it online just to be there. I mean, it should be public. We don't see how much all the other public figures take home on a monthly basis. The information is there, they can get it, it will be public in our public, okay, commissioners got $100 for compensation for this month. That will be included in our material and available to the public. We don't have to go through. We've been having this discussion. As I said, the chair said that was the wrong reading, different interpretations. When I first saw this with the commission website, my interpretation was it was intentional to shame the commissioners who have been advocating to get paid because they're commissioners who don't think it should be. And I was one that was always willing, and I did so today, to put all my reasons why I believe we should get paid publicly. So the public could hear my comments and could take, from there. It's available. I have nothing to hide. Get my records, right? That is fine with me. But why single us out?
I think
monthly do
it's
that?
not singling us out. I think it's our
My
taking a
perception.
proactive step
Sure.
as the Ethics Commission for the state of New York to set an example that we're willing to go above and beyond what is required of us for the sake of transparency, particularly in an area like this that's so fraught for misinterpretation and suspicion. So I think it's just added assurance to the public that this is no attempt on anybody's part to pad their pockets, but that people want to be, as the statute allows, sufficiently compensated for the time that they give to this commission, and that we're willing to both have that time audited and to share it without any barriers between the public and that information.
And you want this to go into effect right away, effective retroactively, even though we have no idea what the total amount will be.
I would, yes, and we would, yes, and then we would have to monitor it along the way, and then make budget requests and adjustments, because we're never going to know until we do it.
Right.
It's just kind of impossible. And we're trying to, yes. So I've said enough. So there's a motion on the floor. Motion says compensation for activities performed in the fulfillment of the responsibilities of commissioners for this commission. That commissioners will submit that time through timesheets and a process developed by staff. The commissioners' timesheets will be audited on an annual basis by the state controller, and that compensation for commissioners will be reported to the public on a monthly basis. That is a resolution, and times it would be submitted in, I guess, quarter-hour segments.
And retroactive.
And that, I'm sorry,
And
and retroactive to July 1, 2022, and that we will do a July 8th, 2022, and that there will be a 6-month assessment of the.
I thought you wanted an annual audit and you're gonna do it annually, so we're changing the original motion to now 6 months.
No. The audit is the controller auditing our timesheets on an annual basis.
And then
The
you said
assessment
an
is just to
annual
see where we
report.
are, so the budgetary implications. So that if we need to adjust the request from the legislature or whoever we requested from to make budget mods, then we'll be able to do that. We'll have some information, some data on which to do that.
The motion needs a second.
It was
Okay.
seconded by Commissioner Austin or
I think,
or Commissioner Whittingham. So that's the motion on the table. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Let's have a show of hands. So it's Davy, Austin, Carballo, Whittingham. Do I see Edwards?
Yes.
Yes.
And do I
Yes.
see James?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, and those opposed? Cardozo and Groenwegen. So the motion passes, and then one abstention from Commissioner Ayers. So the motion passes 6-1. All right. The chair will now entertain a motion that if there's no new or other business, that we adjourn to executive session pursuant to Public Officers Laws 105 and Executive Law 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to section 94 of the Executive Law. Is there a motion to that effect? Commissioner Carballo, is there a second? Commissioner Cardoza. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye. Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned to executive session. Thank you very much.
Let's wait till.
Okay, we can cut the live stream. Downstairs.
Ready?
Hold on.
Okay.
Are we live?
Yes.
And you're live.
Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back to the public session of this February 28th meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. We'll now have a report out from the executive session by our Executive Director, Sanford Berlin.
Thank you. In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation. The commission discussed personnel matters. The commission discussed informal guidance pursuant to Executive Law, Section 94, Sub 7, and Part 932 of the commission's regulations. The commission discussed steps in several investigative matters, closed 8 such matters, and discussed several other investigative matters.
Any questions or comments? A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just a word of thanks to the staff and my peer commissioners for their hard work and commitment and dedication to the ethics of the state of New York, particularly as they are expressed in this public sphere. So with that, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.